walking through kitchens, and you should do this when you guys are back here too, is you know those games you can play online where it's like you have to pick out like the 7 or 8 things or whatever that don't belong in a certain area, like pick the things that don't look right. It's the same thing. So if you're walking back here and you're looking around, you know, we look at a lot of things. Like I said, employees #1, but you know, facility-wide, like looking at your kitchen. You know, we look at the conditions of the outsides of your coolers. You know, obviously we take temps on the insides. Do you guys know what temperature refrigerators should be held at? What'd you say?
Nothing. I'm good.
It's 41 or below, right? And then, so all your coolers, you stick your hand in there and it doesn't feel cold. It's pretty simple. It's probably not.
Hey guys, real fast. What's the temperature danger zone?
41 to 135.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Awesome.
41, right?
Yeah, good. So that's your danger zone, right, for a reason. So if it's below 41, then it's not really going to grow much bacteria. If it's above 135, same thing. You know, you can't trust these thermometers on the outside of these. They half the time don't work. That's why we always like to have one on the inside as well. And then, you know, have these probe type thermometers that we use that you can poke things with and get an internal temperature on food. You know, and don't, you know, contaminate food by going from one thing to the other, poking it with the same thermometer. We use these, you know, alcohol swabs, so make sure you sanitize your thermometer, you know, as you're poking things to get a temp. So that's huge, temperatures, right? Pretty easy, but gets overlooked a lot. You know, then we look around at the, you know, how it's maintained, if it's working right. You know, like up here in the vent hoods, we look to make sure that, like, these aren't, like, nasty, greasy, disgusting. You know, we look to make sure that they work and that they're ventilated and things like that. You know, we look at floor tiles to see that they're in pretty good repair. If they're cracked up and busted, they're A, dangerous to trip on, and then B, that you can't really clean them. So the term we use a lot is smooth and easily cleanable, right? So if you ask yourself, is that smooth and easily cleanable? If it is, then you can probably sanitize it the right way. Same thing with like your utensils and stuff hanging back here. You know, you want to make sure they're stored properly hanging. You're not going to contaminate them. You know, and then you don't want to store them down in the food product and things like that. You want to make sure you get them out of the food, clean them, sanitize them, and hang them back up. So, as you guys probably know, you know, the 3-step process: wash, rinse, sanitize. That's extremely important to make sure you keep everything clean, sanitized, and ready to use for the next time. And then, you know, these bulk spice containers and things like this underneath here where these guys are standing, you know, we like to make sure that those are clean, they're in good repair, they're commercial grade, you know, and they're just storing food products and things like that.
And also that they're labeled.
Yeah, and they should have a label on them, you know, especially like white powdery stuff could be a lot of things, soap to, you know, anything. So, so make sure that, you know, if you can't easily look at it and go, yep, that's rice, you know, they should have a label on it. So, you know, we look up too. That's one thing people forget about is to look up. So, you know, what's going on? Is the ceiling in good repair? Is it leaking down on your food or anything like that? Are the lights working so you can actually see what's going on back here? You know, and a lot of times these ceiling vents get real dusty and things like that. So, you know, all those kind of building things on your sample sheet you have in front of you, those kind of go under these areas on the right-hand side between like 10 and 14. So that's, you know, design and construction of things. Is it designed and constructed right? Smooth and easily cleanable. Section 11, you know, that's all your thermometers and your test strips you use to sanitize, to test your sanitizer, and to take temps. You know, and then 13 is utensil storage. So like we talked about, are your utensils stored properly? And then section 14, you know, that's your floors, walls, ceilings, physical facility kind of things, anything like that. Holes in the wall to busted up tiles to anything like that. So those right there are what we consider to be kind of non-critical violations. So they, you know, the thought is if you don't correct those in a timely manner, they can lead you to these critical violations, which are on that left side of that sheet. So, you know, most of those are self-explanatory. You know, I'm not going to beat you up going over all those, but, you know, temperatures is huge. We talked about that. Section 3 is all about the proper temperature out of the danger zone, okay? And then, you know, 4, sanitization, talked about that too. Wash, rinse, sanitize, making sure everything's clean properly. And then there's a whole section like we talked about. Section 2 is all personnel. So those are the big ones. And see the ones that have the little FBI next to them? Those are the biggest foodborne illness. That's what FBI stands for. Risk factors. So, you know, it's like these are the most critical of the critical, I guess is the way to think about that. So when we come in, you really want to try to avoid anything on that left side, especially the ones that say FBI next to them. So, you know, we can kind of wander a little bit through this way, and I'll show you guys a couple more things in here. But yeah, I was going to point down here, so if you guys look right behind you.
What do you guys think about that? I just want to point out, you guys were the only classes in the kitchen. Just throwing that out there. So, just be aware of your tools. Okay? Alright,
Yeah.
let's move back out.
Mike is good. Yeah. So out here, you know, in your main part of the kitchen, you know, there's a lot of things that, this is where it's going to be busy, you know, people working, people touching things all the time. So we want to make sure, you know, you have accessible hand sinks, which you clearly do. Now, a big one, too, is hot and cold water. So if you go in to wash your hands, and, like, here's what we do. We walk into a kitchen on an unannounced inspection. Just by walking in and washing our hands, I can tell you probably 95% of what's going on in the kitchen. I'm checking for hot and cold water, soap and paper towels at the hand sinks for people to dry their hands on. I'm just looking around the kitchen, you know, just kind of seeing what's going on, watching for people doing things they shouldn't be doing. You know, I'm over there washing my hands. You know, I look over here and I see this. Does anybody tell me there's two things wrong with this? Assume it has stuff in it.
There is something in it.
Yeah, so there's a little bit in it. Anybody? No? Right, so that's the first one. Good is that, yeah. So chemical spray bottles shouldn't be stored on your prep tables, right, for obvious reasons.
So what would you use it for? It's not labeled.
And it's not labeled.
Yeah.
Good job, guys.
I thought you said salad.
Yeah, so that's good. So that could be anything, you know, like, so, you know, what are you using it for? Is it labeled? If it's spilled, could it contaminate something? Those are all things and good questions to ask. You know, if I'm washing my hands and I look over and there's a big plate of chicken sitting right here and nobody's touched it, you know, then I'm going to start asking, why is that chicken sitting there? How long has it been there? It's at 52 degrees. Somebody needs to be doing something with it. You know, so it's a lot of observation, you know, just kind of trying to see what's going on. You know, in these kind of areas, you know, we can talk about, you know, somebody's over here cooking burgers. You know, I can ask them about what are their cook temps? You know, what temperature are you supposed to cook ground beef to? Does anybody know? No? It's 155. Okay, 155. And then chicken, 165. So whenever you have chicken or any poultry, you always want to cook that to 165. And then beef, ground beef, 155. The reason steaks and things like that aren't dangerous and you can kind of order them medium rare and things like that is because think about ground beef, what it's been through. It was a whole piece of meat, then it was ground up, and it's all touching each other now. The outside is in, the inside's out, it's all coating. So that's why you got to cook it higher versus a whole muscle intact steak where you can kind of just, you know, sizzle it on one side, sizzle it on the other, and, you know, even if it's still bleeding, which isn't my way of eating the steak, but, you know, it's really probably not going to make you sick because you're killing all that bacteria that is on the outside of that. But, yeah, so those are things we do, you know, ask about cook temps. We look for glove changing, you know, if some guy's over here making food and then wiping his hands on his pants and answering his phone and then gets back and starts making more food, you know, that's things that we look for as far as behavior. You know, what else out here, you know, take it over.
Well, I was just saying, yeah, I think the hardest thing I'm trying to work on is just watching people, which ironically is the most important thing to do. And I think the best part to do is just watch people people's hands, see where they go. You know, do they, as Brian said, are they washing their hands and then, you know, they're going like this on their apron or what have you. You know, that apron could have just been chopping up chicken and then, you know, raw chicken and just splattered on them. If you're, you know, and sort of getting back to the main point, you know, I think the best thing to do is if you are looking at something and you're just like, you know, I don't think that's good or right, and you're probably right. You know, sometimes we can get in the thick of things and we're like, oh, that's probably all right, but really think about it, like if I'm maybe making pizza dough and I'm, you know, got my hands up here and I'm getting in here and, you know, it's getting at my wrists and stuff. You know, this watch, I can't clean this watch, so I shouldn't be, you know, getting my hands into, you know, maybe ready to eat foods or something like that with my watch, just because I can't clean it. You know, shouldn't be wearing that. So even people's wounds, you know, if somebody's got like a burn on their hand or something like that, they can still work. But does anybody have any idea what you could do? Sure. Yeah. So yeah, two layers, so to say. You know, bandage and then like a glove that can cover it. But yeah, I think that's all I got.
Have you guys ever seen people working in the kitchen with a wound and they just fill up their glove with blood? Because I swear, when I was working at the Ritz, I would see that all the time because people just got so busy and wrapped in with their job, and they're like, "Oh no, I nicked myself. Just put a glove on it," and it just.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, particularly in this weather, and if you're in food preparation, you have to wash your hands a lot. And you know, I'm not in food preparation. My knuckles are, you know, they got little dings, little cuts in them from just the dry weather. So, and I've seen like somebody's whole wrist just, you know, covered in, just to look like a wrap. But you know, then in that case, they need like a longer glove somehow to cover it all up. So it's tricky, but you know, if you see something, say something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's critical. You know, I was at, I forget where it was a sandwich place somewhere. I can't remember which one. There's a million of them. And this guy was slicing bread, like by hand, like just doing a bunch of them. And, yeah, he sliced like right in between his thumb and his index finger. That web right there. Yeah, and like he was so busy that he was still cutting bread, and as I'm watching him, and it's just streaks of blood across like the last like 5 of them, and then he's like cutting, and he's like, oh, I guess I did cut myself, you know. But like you said, people get in such a hurry. You know, can you imagine if somebody, like, if you went to make a sandwich for somebody and there was just like a streak of smeared blood on the top of it? You know, like, yeah, and sometimes I'll tell people, like, throw that away. You know,
like that, but I'm sure it's going to be buried in the good bread.
Yeah, that's the special bread. But yeah, you know, you get in a hurry, you get busy, you know, or you don't even notice sometimes that you're bleeding. You know, I do that all the time. I'll just be like, did I start bleeding? But, you know, you have to watch out for that kind of stuff when you're back in the kitchen, and it's hard. Like Colin said, if you nick your finger, you can double cover it with a Band-Aid and a glove. You get like the web of your hand, you know, and you can kind of bandage it and put a glove on maybe, but that's when, you know, you need to go to your kitchen management and say, hey, this happened, I covered it, everything's good, nothing's contaminated. Maybe you need to go just do the dishes and the tables for a little while or something with those big gloves that come up to here. You know, change your task. Don't, you know, just assume you keep doing what you're doing. Because yeah, I see that kind of stuff all the time, nicks and cuts and things like that. And then weird stuff too. Like I was in the kitchen like 3 months ago, and there was an iguana walking around in the reptiles. And I was like, "What's up, cool iguana?" But it can't be back here. You know, like you know, salmonella. You know, reptiles. You know. But people just don't think about it. They're like, oh, well, I don't want to leave him home alone. He's my buddy. It's like, it's cool. I'm happy for you. But, you know.
Or somebody changing, like, a baby on, like, the prep.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that, too. Yeah. Just changing. Yeah. Changing baby everywhere. People change babies everywhere. I don't get it.
By the
I've got
way,
a baby.
guys, you don't know who has been on these tables before you come in, so don't forget to sanitize. I do have a son, and he does come in here. You don't know if I've just thrown him on the table and cleaned him. So make sure you're sanitizing.
She didn't.
I did. Are you sure I didn't? No.
Yeah. It's